From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
Light them all up.
002 traffic, 260.
Come on, fire. Hey, Roger. Keep shooting.
Massacre caught on tape. The U.S. military's confirmed the authenticity of their own video, showing U.S. forces indiscriminately firing on Iraqi civilians. The 12 dead include a Reuters photographer and his driver. The footage, filmed by the U.S. helicopter gunship, was released by the website WikiLeaks. Then from Iraq to Afghanistan, U.S.-led NATO forces have admitted to the killing of 2 pregnant Afghan women and a teenage girl in a nighttime raid. We'll go to Kabul to speak with the reporter who broke the story and is charging the military with a cover-up. Then here at home, the worst coal mining disaster in a quarter of a century.
At approximately 3 o'clock this afternoon, as a crew was exiting the mine in a man trip, there appears to have been an explosion.
At least 25 coal miners are dead after the explosion at a Massey Energy mine in Raleigh County, West Virginia. The mine's been cited for hundreds of safety violations. We'll get the latest. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In West Virginia, 25 coal miners have died after a huge explosion at a Massey Energy mine in Raleigh County. It was the worst mining disaster in the United States in more than a quarter of a century. U.S. Mine Safety and Health Administration spokesperson Kevin Strickland said 4 miners are still missing.
What we have is at approximately 3 o'clock this afternoon, as a crew was exiting the mine in a man trip, there appears to have been an explosion. And there was a sudden gust of air, and persons who were underground that weren't affected as much by it went back into the mine and found 9 miners that were in that man trip. 7, unfortunately, very sadly, 7 of the 9 miners are now deceased, and the other 2 are injured.
By early this morning, the death toll had reached 25. The Charleston Gazette reports mine safety experts said initial reports are that the explosion involved methane that built up inside a sealed area of the mine or that leaked through mine seals. The Gazette reports such a scenario would be a repeat of the 2006 Sago and Darby disasters in West Virginia and Kentucky, which claimed 17 lives. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette reports the Massey-owned mine was cited for 458 safety violations last year alone, and federal inspectors fined Massey more than $382,000 for repeated serious violations involving its ventilation plan and equipment. On Monday, the wives and relatives of many of the miners gathered at the Massey site.
They told me there'd been an explosion, and I said, where? And they said, performance. And he just went to that mine. He just transferred to that mine a while back, not long.
We'll go to West Virginia for a report later in the broadcast. Under a new national strategy for nuclear weapons, the Obama administration's maintaining the right to use nuclear weapons first and to use them to attack any nation accused of violating the main treaty to halt nuclear proliferation, including Iran and North Korea. Anti-nuclear activists and some Democratic lawmakers were hoping Obama would issue a blanket statement that the country would never again be the first to use nuclear weapons. The new policy, known as the Nuclear Posture Review, narrows potential U.S. nuclear targets. And the New York Times reports that for the first time, the United States is explicitly committing not to use nuclear weapons against non-nuclear states that are in compliance with the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. As part of the policy, the U.S. is not removing any nuclear weapon from alert. A watchdog website called WikiLeaks released a classified U.S. military video Monday showing a U.S. helicopter gunship indiscriminately firing on Iraqi civilians. The 2007 attack killed 12 people, including 2 employees of the Reuters news agency, photographer Namir Noor Eldin and driver Saeed Chma. We'll have more on the story after headlines. In Baghdad, another 28 people have died in a series of coordinated bombings that destroyed 7 buildings. More than 90 Iraqis have died in the capital over the past 5 days. Meanwhile, in Afghanistan, NATO forces have been accused of killing 4 civilians in an airstrike overnight in the southern Helmand province. The raid reportedly killed 2 women, a child, and an elderly man, along with suspected insurgents. The incident comes only 2 days after NATO acknowledged it had killed 5 Afghan civilians, including 3 women, during a night raid on a home in the southeast of the country in February. We'll have more on Afghanistan later in the broadcast. Human Rights Watch has accused U.S.-backed Pakistani troops of carrying out more than 200 extrajudicial killings in the past 8 months of suspected Taliban sympathizers. Most of the killings have occurred in the Swat Valley. Tom Malinowski of Human Rights Watch said, quote, "People are taken away, and sometimes they turn up a few days or weeks later having been tortured. Sometimes they disappear. Sometimes their bodies dumped with a bullet in the head." The U.S. has given more than $15 billion in aid to Pakistan since the September 11th attacks. In Haiti, some schools opened on Monday for the first time since the January 12th earthquake, but many schools remain closed due to a lack of repairs or equipment. Local union representatives criticized the education ministry for what they said was poor preparation to reopen the schools.
It was a lot of high-minded rhetoric for the government to announce the schools were opening without making any of the necessary preparations to receive the students.
The earthquake destroyed or damaged more than 4,000 schools, as well as the education ministry itself. Haiti estimates at least 38,000 students and more than 1,300 teachers and other education personnel died in the earthquake. The Transportation Department has announced it's fining Toyota $16.4 million for failing to notify U.S. regulators about potential problems with unintended acceleration. Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood said, quote, "We now have proof that Toyota failed to live up to its legal obligations. Worse yet, they knowingly hid a dangerous defect for months from U.S. officials and did not take action to protect millions of drivers and their families." In the last 6 months, Toyota has recalled more than 8 million vehicles worldwide, about 6 million of them in the United States. The $16.4 million fine is just a fraction of the $200 billion Toyota reported in revenue last year. In healthcare news, 2009 turned out to be a very good year for the CEO of the private health insurance company WellPoint. Angela Braly's compensation package soared by 51% last year. She earned $13.1 million, up from $8.7 million in 2008. At least 3 other WellPoint executives received compensation increases of as much as 75%. A Texas man has been arrested after threatening to use deadly force to stop an abortion at the Southwestern Women's Surgery Center in Dallas. Erlandon Joseph Lowe was charged with 1 count of using interstate commerce to communicate a threat to injure and 1 count of threatening force to intimidate and interfere with clients and employees of a reproductive health service. Temperature records are being broken across the United States this week as the Northeast and Midwest have experienced summer-like weather. In Caribou, Maine, the temperature soared to 82 degrees Saturday, shattering the old record for the date by 24 degrees. In New York City, temperatures this week are about 20 degrees above normal. And at the University of California, Berkeley, students, faculty, and workers held a demonstration Monday to show support for students who are facing possible suspension for taking part in protest actions against tuition hikes, layoffs, and cuts at the schools. The Office of Student Conduct has sent letters to over 100 student protesters offering them a 7-month suspension rather than entering into a formal student conduct hearing where they could face more severe disciplinary measures. Students accuse the administration of trying to silence dissent on campus.
This is absolutely a political situation. It's a political process designed to intimidate dissent on this campus because the regents and the administration are trying to push through austerity measures, and they don't want students and workers to be fighting back against their austerity measures.
Dozens of students are also facing criminal charges for briefly taking over a freeway in Oakland on March 4th, the March 4th day of action to defend public education. Authorities are also pressing charges against at least 2 independent journalists who are covering the protest. Brandon Jordan is being charged with 5 misdemeanors, including rioting. David Martinez faces 4 infractions. Jordan and Martinez were working on a piece for Democracy Now! At the time of their arrests.